Greetings everyone. In this video, we will talk about constructors and destructors. Now, what is a constructor? Constructor is a member function of a class which is used to initialize the data members of the class. But why do we need constructors? Let us understand this. We have already discussed that the class specification provides only a template and no memory allocation is done when we define a class. The necessary memory allocation is done to data members only when the object of the class is created. Thus, we cannot initialize data members of a class at the time of declaring a class. So, if we look at the example, suppose I am creating a class student. So you can see there are two sections, private and public. In the private section, I am defining two data members, roll number and marks. And suppose I want to assign some initial value to these data members. I want to assign 0 to roll number and 10 to marks. So will I be able to do this? No. Both of these statements are invalid. We cannot assign any initial value to the data members of a class at the time of declaring a class. This is because no memory allocation is done when we declare a class. Memory allocation is done only when the object of the class is created. So, these data members, they don't have any space right now. So, we cannot assign or store any values in these data members. So, these statements are invalid. But the initialization of data members is very important. Just like any other variable. Just like we initialize other variables in our program. And we must initialize the data members before actually using them. Otherwise, they may contain garbage values. Now, this initialization is done with the help of constructors. They are used to initialize the data members as soon as the memory is allocated to them. And very important to note that if we do not make our own constructors in C++, the compiler will provide its own constructors. Now let us see how we can make a constructor. Constructor is a member function of a class which has the same name as that of the class and it is used to initialize the object of that class with legal initial values. So if we look at the example of the class, we are taking the same example, class student. So you can see there are two sections again, private and public. In the private section, we have two data members, roll number and name. And this is the constructor, which is a member function of a class, you can see, and it has the same name as that of the class. This is what we are saying. Constructor is a member function of a class. You can see here, this is a member function because it is followed by a set of parentheses. It has the same name as that of the class. So you can see here, the student here has the same name as that of the class and we are assigning initial values to the data members here using this constructor. So we are assigning 0 to roll number and again we are assigning 0 to the data member marks. So this is a constructor of the class student. Now let us understand some important features of constructors. Constructor has the same name as that of the class. You can see here, this is the constructor and it has the same name as that of the class. Constructor does not have any return type, not even void. So please remember that we don't have to give any return type before the constructor, before the name of the constructor function, and we cannot even write void. Constructors can be declared only in the public section of the class. This is very important. So you can see here I am trying to declare the constructor in the private section of the class. But this statement is invalid because this constructor function is used by the object of the class. An object can access only those functions which are present in the public section of the class. So if the constructor is present in the private section of the class, this constructor function won't be invoked by the object. So this must, and also we won't be able to create any object if the constructor function is present in the private section of the class. The constructor has to be present in the public section. Constructor is called automatically when the object of the class is created. So when the object of the class is created, it is called automatically. Now let us see how we can call a constructor. A constructor can be called in two ways. It can be called implicitly and it can also be called explicitly. Now let us see how. Now let us understand this with the help of an example. Now we have class student here again. We are taking the same class with two private data members, roll number and marks. And in the public section, we are declaring a constructor. You can see here, constructor has the same name as that of the class and it is initializing the data members with legal initial values. Now let us see how we can invoke this constructor. Now in void main, I am creating an object of this class. So you can see here, student is the name of the class and S1 is the object of class student. So when I create an object S1, the constructor function student will be called automatically and it will assign the default values to roll number and marks. So you can see here when I will give this line, when I write this line, when this line is executed, this is the memory diagram, the data members, roll number and marks of the object S1, and you can see here the value 0 is being assigned to roll number and value 0 is being assigned to the data member marks of the object S1. So this is how the constructor is called and this is called the implicit call. Now we can also call the constructor explicitly. Let us see how. Again, I am creating the same class student with two data members, roll number and marks, and I am creating a constructor in the public section of the class which has the same name as that of the class and it is initializing the data members with initial values. Any initial value you can choose. Now you can see this is the end of the class. Now in void main, I am creating an object. Student is the name of the class and S1 is the name of the object. And here I am explicitly calling this constructor function student and this is called the explicit call of the constructor. So I can call the constructor implicitly as well as explicitly. The function of both the calls is same. Here also the student S1 object of type student is created in memory and the value 0 will be assigned to roll number and value 0 will be assigned to marks. So this is the explicit call in which I am explicitly calling the constructor function like this, and this is the implicit call in which the constructor is called automatically. There is no need to give the name of the constructor function. Here we are giving the name of the constructor function, you can see here. So this is the difference between the two calls. Although the functioning is same, there is only a difference in writing the syntax. So there are various types of constructors. Let us study about these. The first one is the default constructor. It is a constructor that accepts no parameters. Then the next one is parametrized constructor. It is a constructor that accepts parameters for its invocation. And parametrized constructor is also called as regular constructor. Then third type is the copy constructor. Copy constructor is a special type of constructor which is used to create a new object as a copy of an already existing object. So if an object exists, we can make a copy of it using a copy constructor. Now let us study all these constructors in detail. The first one is the default constructor. Again, the same points. The default constructor takes no arguments and it is used to initialize an object of the class with legal initial values. So let us see how we can declare a default constructor in our class. I am taking the same example, class student with private data members, roll number and marks. And in the public section, I am declaring the constructor. In the constructor, I am assigning the value 0 to roll number and marks to 0.0. This we have already done. Actually, this is nothing but a default constructor. You can see here, we are not passing any argument or parameter here. This is a simple constructor and this is called a default constructor. So when I am creating an object of this class, student S1, I am not passing any parameter again here. So this object S1 is created and it will call the default constructor, which is this type, and this will initialize its data members by legal initial values 0 here. Now let us talk about parametrized constructor. Parametrized constructor accepts arguments. It initializes the data members of the object with arguments passed to it. So we are passing arguments into the parametrized constructor, and the data members of the object take the values of these arguments. So let us see an example of parametrized constructor. Again, take an example of class student, and this time I have given 3 data members, roll number, name and marks, and I am trying to declare both the constructors here, default as well as parameterized. So let us see how we can declare a default constructor. In the default constructor, the name is same as that of the class. You can see the class name is student and the name of the constructor function is also student. I am not passing any argument here. So this is a default constructor, and I am initializing roll number by value 0 and marks by value 0 again, and I am initializing name by the value null. So please remember that whenever you are assigning, you are copying some value to a string variable, you have to use strcpy function. You cannot simply assign, you cannot simply say name equal to null. Very important to remember. Now this is a default constructor. Now we'll talk about the parameterized constructor. As we have talked, this again it has the same name as that of the class. You can see the student is the same name as that of the class, and I am passing arguments here. The arguments are the same as the data members. We are passing the values of data members as arguments here. You can see here I'm assigning the value roll to the data member roll number. Again, I'm using strcpy. Very important to note, we cannot write down name equal to name. You have to use the strcpy function because strings cannot be equated. They have to be used, they have to be copied using strcpy function. So I'm copying name to name. Name is an argument which I'm passing from function main, and I'm storing mar in marks. So this is how the arguments are passed in this type of constructor, and the values of these arguments are assigned to the data members of the class. So these are 2 other functions, display and enter, and my class has ended here. Now let's see how this constructor is invoked in main, void main. So when I say student S1, you can see I'm not passing any parameter or argument here. So in this case, the default constructor will be called, and all the data members of roll number, name and marks of the objects S1, they will be assigned the value 0, 0 and null. You can see the memory diagram of it. So if I say the S1 is the first object of class student, and the roll number is assigned the value 0, name is assigned the value null, and marks is assigned the value 0 again. Now when the next statement is executed, again an object S2 of type student is created, but this time while creating this object, I am passing arguments also. I am passing 3 arguments. I have 3 data members here, and I am passing arguments for all 3 of them. The first one is for roll number, the next one is for name, and the last one is for marks. So when this statement is executed, again the parameterized constructor is called. Roll will store the value 1, name will store the value Ramesh, and mar will store the value 350. So when I assign these values to the data members, roll number will take the value roll, which is 1. Name will take the value which is stored in name, and it is Ramesh, and marks will take the value which is stored in mar, and this is 350. Let us see the memory diagram of it. So if I see the memory diagram, this is my object S2. So you can see in roll number 1 is stored, in name Ramesh is stored, and in marks 350 is stored. So as soon as I declare this object, the data members are assigned memory and these values will be stored. These are the initial values which I am giving to the data members of the object S2. Now let us see the third statement. The third statement again is a call to a parameterized constructor. But the difference between the second and the third statement is that in this statement, this is an implicit call to the parameterized constructor. And now we are giving an example of how we can call the parameterized constructor explicitly. Again, the syntax is same. We are writing the name of the class first, then the object name, equal to, and I'm invoking this constructor function explicitly here. I'm giving the name of the constructor function followed by the arguments which I'm sending here, 2, Kajal and 400. Again, the value 2 will be taken by the member role. Then Nam will take the value Kajal and Mar will take the value 400. So when this function is executed, roll number will take the value stored in roll, which is nothing but 2. Name will take the value stored in Nam, which is Kajal, and marks will take the value stored in Mar, which is 400. So you can see the memory diagram. This is my object S3, where roll number contains 2, name contains Kajal, and marks contain 400. So you can see now when the object S1 is created, default constructor is called, and when the object S2 is created, parameterized constructor is called, but this call is implicit call of parameterized constructor. And when the object S3 is created, again the parameterized constructor is called, but this time this is an explicit call of parameterized constructor. Now let us talk about copy constructor. Copy constructor accepts an object as an argument. Now we can again revise. Default constructor takes no argument. Parameterized constructor take arguments in which we are passing values to the data members of the object, and copy constructor accepts an object as an argument. So if we create a new object and initializes its data members with data members of the object passed to it as an argument. So in this, while creating an object, we are passing an object as an argument so that the data members of an already existing object will be copied to the data members of the new object. So let us see how we can create a copy constructor. So you first have to give the class name, and as an argument, you have to give the class name and the object name, and please don't forget this ampersand sign. This is very important. It means that I am sending this object by reference. Now, why it is important? Let's see this. It is necessary to pass an object by reference in copy constructor because if we do not pass the object by reference, then a copy constructor will be invoked to make the copy of the object. I hope you have understood this, because if I don't give ampersand, then it means I am invoking this constructor by giving the name of the object and we are calling it by value. So to call by value, the copy of this object will be created, and to create a copy of the object, again the copy constructor would be invoked. So in this process, copy constructor will be invoked again and again, and it will be a recursive process, because this is the definition of copy constructor. So again, when the copy constructor is invoked, again this line will be executed in which we have not written ampersand. So again it will ask you to create the copy of the object, and so copy object will be called recursively many times, and this process will be repeated again and again endlessly, resulting in running short of memory, and ultimately our system will hang. So please never try this. Don't create a copy constructor without this ampersand sign. Always send an object by reference and not by value. Now let us understand the copy constructor with the help of a C++ program. So you can see here I am again creating a class student. with three private members, roll number, name and marks. And in this, the first one is the default constructor. You can see here, this is the name of the constructor, which is the same as that of the class. And I'm not passing any argument. So this is a default constructor. And I'm assigning some default values like roll number 0, marks 0 and name null. You can also assign default values of your choice. You can give 10 to roll number, 100 to marks, whatever your default values of your choice. Now next I am creating a parameterized constructor in which I am passing values of data members as arguments. So I am declaring 3, as we have 3 data members. So I am passing 3 arguments, one for each data member, and these values are assigned to the data members. You can see here roll number equal to roll. We are copying name to name, and marks will contain the values stored in mar. Now let us see the copy constructor. According to the syntax, what we have done in the previous slide, again we are writing the same thing. We are first giving the name of the class, which I'm giving the name of the constructor, which is same as name of the class. And in the argument, we are writing, we are creating an object. We are sending an object by reference. Very important. Again, this object is of type student only, and we are passing it by reference. And what we have to do now, we have to copy the data members of this object to the newly created object. So I'm saying roll number equal to s dot roll number, strcpy, name comma s dot name, and marks equal to s dot marks. So let us see how this function works, executes. When we call this function in main, it will become more clear to you. So this is the ending of my class, and this is the void main. When I say student S1, so see, just check whether I'm passing any argument or not. In this case, with the object name, I'm not passing any argument. So it means it is a default constructor will be called, and the data members of the object S1 will get the default values. Now in the second statement, I'm saying student S2 1 comma Ramesh comma 450. So in this statement, I'm passing the values of data members as arguments. So in this case, the parameterized constructor will be called because there's one-to-one correspondence of the parameters. So roll number will take 1, name will take Rajesh, and mar will take the value 450. And these values will be assigned to the data members of the object S2. You can see here my object S2 is created, and roll number will get the value 1, name will get the value Ramesh, and marks will get the value 450. Now if I talk about the third statement, I am saying student S3, and in the bracket I am saying S2. It means I am passing S2 as an argument to the object S3. So this is an object. So in this case, the copy constructor will be invoked, and the values of data member, the values of S2 and S2 and S will share the same memory space because this is passed by reference. And when I say roll number is equal to S dot roll number, the values of S2 will be copied. The roll number of S2 will be copied to the roll number of S3. Now this roll number will refer to object S3 because this constructor function is being invoked for the object S3. Then when I say S dot name, so the name is referring to the object S2, and this name refers to the object S3. When I say S dot marks, marks will refer to the object S2, and this marks will refer to object S3. You can see here. This is the object S3. Roll number has been assigned the value 1. Name is assigned the value Rajesh, and marks is assigned the value 450, and it is the same as that of the object S2. Now in the fourth statement, as you can see, I am again passing in the data members as the parameters, values of data members as the parameters. So I am passing 2, Mohit and 320. So this time again, the parameterized constructor will be called, and the object S4, the data members of the object X4 will get, roll number will get value 2, name will get value Mohit and marks will get value 320. So you can see here in the object S4, roll number has value 2, name has value Mohit and marks has value 320. Now in the last statement, again I am creating a new object S5 and I am writing S5 equal to S4. So in this case also, this is another way of calling a copy constructor. And in this case also, the data members of S4, they get copied to data members of S5 and copy constructor is invoked. So S4 and S, they will share the same memory space. And when I say roll number equal to S dot roll number, so S dot roll number will refer to S4 dot roll number, which is nothing but 2. And this roll number will refer to S5 because this constructor is being called for the object S5. Again, S dot name is copied to name and S dot name refers to the object S4, which is Mohit. So Mohit is copied to the data member name of the object S5 and S dot marks is 320, which will be copied to the marks of the object S5. So we can see the memory diagram. So we can see the memory diagram of the object S5. Roll number is 2, name is Mohit and marks is 320. It means all the data members of S4, they are copied to S5. So this is how the copy constructor works. Now there are 3 special cases in which copy constructor is always invoked. Now let us study all these cases. Now in the case 1, when an object is passed by value to a function. In pass by value method, we require a copy of the argument to be created for the function to operate upon. You remember this thing, I think, whenever we pass by value or call by value, a copy of the actual parameter is created and the formal parameters, they work on that copy. Thus, to create the copy of the passed object, copy constructor is invoked. So let us see this by an example. Suppose we have a class student here again. Again the same thing. I have declared all the 3 type of constructors here. Default constructor, this is the parametrized constructor, and this is the copy constructor, the same way which we did in the earlier program. Now my class has ended here. Now this is a function, a void job, in which I am passing object of class student as an argument. This is not a class. This is not a class function. This is separate from class. I have not written anything. You can do any type of jobs in this function. This example is just to depict how a copy constructor is invoked. So when I say void main student S6 6 comma couple comma 245. So it means I'm creating an object S6 and the data members are getting this value. So I hope you remember now this time which constructor will be invoked. In this I am passing values to the data members of the object. So in this case, parameterized constructor will be invoked. Let us revise again. In default constructor, we are not passing any argument. In parameterized constructor, we are passing the values for the data members of the class, and in copy constructor, we are passing an object as a parameter. So when I call this function job S6, what will happen actually? The copy of this object S6 is created and this is called stu, and while creating this copy, the copy constructor will be invoked. So we can see again, as if we are passing the object S6 by value. So when the function call job is invoked, a copy of stu is created and the data members of S6, they will be copied to stu, and in this process the copy constructor is invoked. Now let us see the second case when the copy constructor is invoked, when a function returns an object. So when an object is returned by the function, the copy constructor is invoked. Let us see how. Again, I am taking the same example of the class student with 3 data members, roll number, name and marks. And again it has 3 constructors, default constructor, parameterized constructor and copy constructor. Now I am declaring a function job in which I am returning an object. See, I am returning an object. So in this function, what I'm doing, I'm creating one object T1 and I'm giving values to it 12, Ajay and 443. So this time, what type of constructor is called? I hope you remember. Parameterize is called because I'm passing values for the data members of the object T1. The T1 object will be created and these values will be assigned to the data members of the object T1. Now I'm returning this object T1 here. So let us see what happens in main. In main, I'm creating an object S6 and I'm assigning some default values. Again, I'm assigning some some values to it. So parameterized constructor will be called and S6 will be created in memory and which has values 6, couple and 245. Now I'm saying student S7 equal to job. So when I invoke this function job, you just see here, as I'm returning an object through this function, so I on the receiving end again I'm creating an object so that it can receive the value which is returned, which will be returned by the function job. So in the function job, what I'm doing, again revise this, we are creating an object using parameterized constructor and we are returning it. So when we return this object will be copied to the object S7. So what will happen? The object S7 will get these values 12, Ajay at 443. So in this program, two objects are being created, S6 which has values 6, couple and 245 using a parameterized constructor. And then a new object S7 is also created which is getting its value from the return of the function job. As this function is returning an object, so S7 will take the values which this function is returning. The job is returning an object which has value 12, Ajay and 443. So these values will be assigned to the object S7. So when these values will be copied to the object S7, the copy constructor will be invoked. Now let us see the third case. Copy constructor is invoked when the value of one object is copied to another object at the time of creating an object. This is very important. We have done the assignment of objects also. We can assign the value of one object of a class to another object, but at that time the copy constructor is not invoked. Copy constructor is invoked only when the value of one object is copied to another object at the time of creating an object. In all other cases, you can see copy constructor is not invoked and the value of one object is copied to another object, simply data member by data member. So let us see an example. I'm again creating the same class so that you will remember this class throughout this session. This class is student with three data members, roll number, name and marks, and three type of constructors: default constructor, parameterized constructor and copy constructor. So in main, let us see what all is there. When I say student S1, this is the first statement. You can say, you see there is no argument passed. So again, the default constructor will be called. And the data members of the object S1 will get the values 0, 0 and 9. So when I say student S2, I am passing the parameters 1, Rajesh and 450. So this time parameterized constructor will be called, this constructor, and the data members of the object S2 will take the values 1, Rajesh and 450. Now the next time, in the next third statement, I am writing student S3 bracket S2. So in this case, I am assigning the values of S2 to the object S3. So in this case, the copy constructor would be invoked. And again, I'm creating one more object S4 by passing arguments to it. And these arguments are the values for the data members of the object S4. So parameterized constructor will be called and the roll number of S4 will take value 2, name will take value Mohit and marks will take value 320. So when I say student S5 is equal to S4, what will happen? The values of data members of S4 will be copied to the data members of S5. They are exactly similar objects. They contain the same value and at this time copy constructor is invoked because we are initializing the values of data members of one object by another object at the time of creating an object. See, this is the time of creating an object. Now, when I say S1 equal to S5, I am trying to copy the values of the object S5 to the object S1. All the data members of S5 will be copied to S1, but this time copy constructor is not invoked. Why? Because S1 is already created in the beginning. You can see here. So this will be done only if we write the statement here at the time of creating an object. Both the objects have already been created, so copy constructor will not be invoked. This is simply copying the value, assigning the value of data members of one object to another. Now let us see what is constructor overloading. C++ allows more than one constructors to be defined in a single class. We have already seen in all the earlier examples, we were declaring all the three types of constructors in a single class. So defining more than one constructor in a single class, provided, very important to learn, provided they all differ in either type or number of argument is called constructor overloading. So constructor overloading can happen only if we can define, although we are defining more than one constructors and all the constructors have the same name, but they differ either in the type or number of arguments. So you can see here in the default constructor there is no argument. In the parameterized constructor, in this case, we have three arguments: role, name, and marks. And we can define more than one parameterized constructor also. See, in this case, I am sending the values for only roll number and name, and I am assigning marks a value 100. So this parameterized constructor is different from this, because in this there are three parameters, and in this case there are only two parameters. And the third one is the copy constructor. So in this, again, the argument type is different. In this there is no argument. In this the argument type is either simple data types, int, char, float, etc. And in this case, in the case of copy constructor, the type of argument is an object. It is an object. So all the three constructors, although they have the same name, these are full constructors, but they differ either in the number of arguments or type of arguments. This is very important. This is called constructor overloading. We are having many functions with the same name and they behave differently in different situations, and it is the compiler who decides which constructor to be called depending upon the arguments passed. So you can see we can define as many parameterized constructors as we want in a single class, provided they all differ in either number or type of arguments. So we can have more than one or two parameterized constructor in the single class. We cannot have more than one default or more than one copy, but number of parameterized constructors can be more than one. But they should all differ either in number or type of arguments. Very important to note. Now let us talk about destructor. A destructor is a member function whose name is the same as that of the class name, and it is preceded by the tilde sign. The tilde sign is there on the keyboard of our computer, so you can always press this symbol. Again, it is automatically called by the compiler when the object goes out of scope. When the object dies, the function destructor is called. Destructors are usually used to deallocate memory and do other cleanup for a class object. They use the cleanup jobs and deallocation of memory and its class members when the object is destroyed or it goes out of scope. So let us see how it works. So let us see an example to understand how we can create a destructor. So again, I am taking a example of class student in which there are two members, roll number and marks, and the first one is a constructor function. I hope you remember this is a default constructor because in this constructor I am not passing any argument. See, this is the destructor function. Destructor function, again we will see the properties. It has the same name as that of the class. See, the name of the class is student, and destructor also has the same name, and this is a function because it is followed by a set of parentheses opening and closing, and it is preceded by the tilde symbol, which indicates that this is not a constructor, this is a destructor. So right now I'm not writing anything in the destructor because destructor function is more useful when we do the dynamic allocation of memory. In this case, mostly the data members, they go out of, as soon as the program go out of scope or the class go out of scope, they are deleted automatically. But the destructor is really essential when we are using dynamic memory allocation. So in the later videos, you will find the importance of destructor. So let us see how it will work. When in void main, I'm creating an object S1 of type student. So when I create an object, the constructor will be called and the data members will be assigned the default values. Now the program has ended here. When my program ends here, or when the scope in which the object is created expires, the object also goes out of scope. And when the object goes out of scope, the destructor function will be called. So in this case, when the program will end, the destructor function will be called. Although I'm not doing anything in this destructor function, but this will be called. Now let us understand few important features of destructor. It has the same name as that of the class and is always preceded by the tilde sign. You can see the tilde sign here. It is called automatically by the compiler when the object goes out of scope. So you do not need to give any explicit call to the destructor. It is called automatically. Destructors are usually used to deallocate memory and do other cleanup for the class object and its members when the object goes out of scope. Again, destructors are always declared in the public section of the class because they are called automatically when the object is going out of scope. So we cannot declare them in the private section, otherwise we'll get an error. And we can have only one destructor in the class. Although we can define many constructors, but we can have only one destructor in the class. Now let us let us see what we have learned through an example. So this is an example, this is the program of which we have to give the output. Let us understand the program first. Again, we have declared a class student here, which has 3 data members, roll number, name and marks. In the public section, the first one is the default constructor. I'm not passing any argument here. So I'm assigning value 0 to roll number, 0 to marks, and I'm copying the value null to name. And I'm giving one display statement, cout statement, default constructor called. Then the next one is the parametrized constructor in which I'm passing the values of data members as parameters. So you will see here, I'm assigning the value roll to roll number, nam to name and mar to marks. And also again, I'm giving the cout statement parametrized constructor called. So whenever this constructor will be called, these values will be assigned and this statement will be displayed on the monitor. Now next one is the copy constructor. So in this constructor, again, I'm passing an object as parameter by reference, very important. And I'm copying the values of data members of this object to the data members of the object which is invoking this function copy constructor. So I'm saying roll number is equal to s dot roll number. I'm copying the value of the name of this object to name of the object which is calling this function and marks to marks. And I'm giving the display statement copy constructor called. So whenever this constructor is called, all the 3 values will be assigned and this statement will be called. And next I'm declaring a destructor. So you can see here, this is preceded by a tilde symbol and this is the name of the class again followed by a set of parentheses. And in this I'm not doing anything, I'm only writing a cout statement which is destructor called. Whenever this destructor statement is executed, destructor function is executed, this statement will be displayed on the monitor. So let's see what will be the output of the main program when this main program is executed. So for the first statement we are saying we are creating an object S1 of class student. So please guess which constructor will be invoked. Yes, this time as we are not giving any argument with this object, default constructor will be called. So the data members of S1 will take these default values and the statement default constructor called will be displayed on the screen. You can see here default constructor called will be displayed in the output window. This is our output window. Now in the second statement we are creating an object S2 and we are passing this as a parameter, which are the values of the data members. So in this case, guess what? Parametrized constructor will be invoked. Yes, and the object S2 will be created and its data members will get the value. Roll number will get 1, name will get Rajesh, and marks will get 450. And after the assignment of these values, the statement parameterized constructor called will be displayed on the monitor. So you can see here the second statement is parameterized constructor called. Now when the third statement is executed, we are passing S2 object while creating the object S3 as a parameter. So in this case, you can see this is we are passing an object as an argument. So this time the copy constructor will be invoked. S2 and S, they will share the same memory space, and the values of all the data members of S2, they will be copied to S3. Here roll number, name and marks, they will refer to object S3 because this function here is being invoked for the object S3. So after assigning the value to the data members of the object S3, the statement copy constructor called will be displayed on the monitor. So you can see the third statement is copy constructor called. Now again I am creating one more object S4, and again I am passing the values of data members as parameters. So this time again the parameterized constructor is called and these values will be assigned. The roll number is assigned the value 2, name is assigned the value Mohit, and marks will be assigned the value 320. So again this time the parameterized constructor call will be displayed. So you can see here in the output window parameterized constructor called is displayed. Now the last statement is we are again creating an object S5 and we are assigning the value of S4 to S5 at the time of creation of S5. So in this case again the copy constructor will be invoked and all the values of S4 will be copied to S5, data members of S5, and then at the end the statement copy constructor called will be displayed on the monitor. You can see here copy constructor called is getting displayed. Now you see here this is the end of our program. Our program ends here. Now when the program ends, all these objects which are created S1, S2, S3, S4 and S5, they die, and when the object die or they go out of scope, the destructor function is called. So first the object S5, the object which is created at the end last is will be destroyed first. So the destructor will be called for the object S5. Then destructor is called for object S4. Then destructor will be called for object S3. And then the destructor will be called for object S2. And this destructor will be called for object S1. So the output, although we do not notice that destructor is called, but if we give the statement, we will come to know that actually this function is being called when the objects go out of scope. So this is the output of this program. Very important to understand. If you haven't understood this output, you can go back and see this example again. So this is again the memory diagram of this, how the objects S1 is created with these values, then S2 is created with 1 Ramesh and 450. S3 is the copy of S2 which has the same values as S2. Then S4 is created and parameterized constructor is invoked and the values 2, Mohit and 320 is assigned to the data members. And then S5 is created which is the copy of the object S4. When all these objects die, the destructor will be called. Now let us revise again all the points which we need to remember for constructors and destructors. Constructors and destructors do not have any return type, not even void. Very important, we cannot even write void, nor can they return values. So they cannot return values and they cannot have even void as a return type. The compiler automatically calls constructors when defining class objects and call destructors when the object goes out of scope. So when the object is being created, constructor is called, and when the object is going out of scope or destroyed, the destructor is called. Derived classes, this will talk more about it in inheritance. They do not inherit constructors or destructors from their base classes, but they do call the constructor and destructor of base classes. Constructors and destructors are never inherited, but they are called, the base constructor and destructor of base classes are called by the child classes. The constructor of the base class is called first and then the constructor of the child class or classes. This concept will be explained more in the video of inheritance. Again, the destructor of a child class object is called before destructor for base class. Again, this concept will be explained again in inheritance in more detail when we talk about the child class and the base class. If we do not declare our own constructor and destructors in the class, then they are automatically defined by the compiler. So we do not give our own, compiler gives its own constructors and destructor. If we declare our own constructor of any one type, then it is necessary to define constructors of other types. Basically, the default constructor is very important. If we are giving a parameterized or a copy constructor, so in any case, we must declare the default constructor because otherwise we will not be able to create an object whose constructor definition is not given in the class. So if we are giving our own constructor definitions, so we can create only those objects which match those constructor definition. So we are not giving copy constructor when we are defining, suppose default constructor we are defining and parameterized we are defining. We have to give copy constructor if we are trying to copy values of one object to another. Otherwise, if we do not give our own copy constructor, then it won't be able to create copy. So C++ compiler uses the concept of stack in memory allocation and deallocation. This compiler creates the memory in sequential order and deletes the memory in reverse order. So if we say, consider the class student in the previous slides. So if this is our main program, suppose student, we are creating three objects x1, x2 and x3. So memory allocation is done first to x1, then to x2 and then to x3. So you can see first x1 will be allocated memory, then x2 and then x3. Means the data members of these objects will get the memory according to the order in which they are created. But the deallocation is done in the reverse order. It means x3 will be when the program ends, the memory which is allocated to them will be deallocated. So the memory of x3 will be deallocated first, then x2 and then x1. So this is always in the reverse order. So this is all for this video. If you like this video, kindly give thumbs up and you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you.